So if we do want to populate this list with all the correct information, we could make a new FSM on this. Okay, we'll come over here, FSM, and we'll just call this display scores. I'm gonna hit edit, and on here and in here, I'll just say init, and then come down here to another state. We want to cycle through each one of these lines, right? Because if we go over to scene view, remember that each one of these lines contains a couple of pieces of information. It actually has three things. It has the rank, but the rank is going to be a static thing. We're never really going to change this rank value, but we do want to change the score and the player initial, right? So these two game objects have a text component on it, and we just want to target those text components and change the values on them. Let's actually clean up these names so we don't get too confused in a moment. So I'm going to call this line 2, and actually I'm going to copy the name like that, and then hit down, F2, paste, backspace 3, and that just makes it a little easier each time I do this. And 5. We have line 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They'll have the same values. So we're going to be targeting the score and the player object. Okay, so we're going to be looking for these. So we'll be setting these by name. Now, if we go to here to the high scores panel, do a get next child action. Okay, so we're going to get the next child of this list game object. We're going to store the next child as next line. Make sure I spell that right. Next line. And we'll have a loop event here. So we'll say, we'll make a new event. We'll just call that loop event. We'll add that. The finished event will be a new event that we can just call complete. Okay, and we'll add that as well. I'm going to move this complete up. By the way, if you ever want to move transitions, what you could do is you could select them, and then holding Control or Command on a Mac, you can hit your up and down arrow keys. So I want my complete to be on top, so my loop event can come straight down here, and then when complete is done, it can pop off to the side like this. I'm going to rename this state get next line. Okay, and when it gets the next line, in here, we'll say set line values. What we want is a find child action. It's going to find the child of our next line. The child name will be we have these two up here, right? Score and player. So we could search for score and store it as a new variable called line score. And then we'll do another find child that'll be looking for the children of our next line, except this one will be looking for the game object called player, and we could store that in a new variable called line player, right, which is what the initials are stored in. So after it gets the value from that thing, we want to set the text on there, right? So what we could do is set text, UI text set text, and we'll put in 2 of these. Okay, so we're going to be setting the text on our line player with a variable, and we're going to be setting the text on our line score with a variable. But first we need to know the score and the initial that we're putting on the thing, right? So up here, if I move this init state, let's add in state where we get player prefs. Okay, so we can come up here we can come over to our other FSM, right, where we load the player prefs. I'm going to copy these 2 states. I'm going to copy these 2 selected actions. Okay, copying them, and I'm going to bring them back over here. I'm going to paste them in here. Okay, so we're loading these variables into these arrays. So now you can see we have these arrays, high score and high score winners. And so what we could do now is we'll send to here, and when it loops, it'll actually get next, array get next, we're getting from our high scores, and the result will be next high score. And we're going to do array get next again, except getting from high score winners, and the result will be next high score winner. Get next score plus initial. Okay, and when this is done, it'll send down here to actually set those line values. And then when the line values, when we get to this part, the UI text set text, we could set the line player with our next high score winner, and then set the line score text with convert next high score. Okay. And then when this is done, we can add a finish transition and send back up here to get next line. Okay, so it'll loop through this until all of the lines have their values filled out. And then here we have complete. Now I should be able to press play, and look at that. Immediately it loads in the score from last time. But the thing is, it puts the initials from the first one in all of the remaining ones because this array value is actually only one item. I know this because I remember setting this one to 5 items, but we never did it for the high score winners. So if you go to the high score winners variable, look at that, it's only one item. So it just kind of got that first value over and over again. We could fix that by doing the same thing we did here where we put 5 values in it on the high scores, right? So high score winners, changing this to 5. Okay, so now let's give this a play. And I think it actually saved this way too with only one value. So when it did the saving. Okay, so if you ever want to clear your data, right? Because obviously I wouldn't want to ship this game with all of my scores on it to the public where they see all of my scores or my friends' scores or something. Like right now, since this gets populated with all of those BAD initials, I'm actually only going to do this once. So I'm going to go over to our display scores. And then in complete, I'm actually going to put player prefs delete all. So this is just going to clear out everything in my player prefs currently, right? So this is sort of a nuclear option. It's going to completely wipe out all the data that I've saved so far, right? So it says over here, removes all keys and values from the preferences, use with caution, right? It's a nuclear option. You don't want to use this all the time. Basically, this is just so I can have a nice reset. So on my FSM over here with the high score winners, the default will be these 5 empty values. Okay, so even with these empty values, I'll put in like a placeholder, XYZ. Okay, so we'll just remember that these are our new placeholders that should get overwritten. So we should see a bunch of XYZs. Okay, so display scores on the complete, it's going to delete all, right? So I'm putting this action here on the complete state. So when it does everything and it's after it even saves all those values, it'll come here and delete all. So let's just play that really quick. Okay, right, it shows us our old stuff. That's fine, that's expected, but it landed here on the state and it did this delete all. So I'm just trusting that behind the scenes, actually, even though this got updated with the old values, that after that, the information that they were updated with was deleted. So I can press stop, and then I can remove this action now. And if I hit play, there we go. Now we have all the zeroed out information. In here in our add new high score, I'm gonna hit edit, go to our variables, in our high score winners, I'm gonna change this size to 5 as well, okay? So it can match the high score, which is also 5, okay? That way there's gonna be 5 empty values that can populate. So now that all that information is cleared, I should be able to press play. Say 000, right? The other, all right, we don't have any values for this and no values for that. Okay, got 70. Okay, now that I got 70 points, I'm just gonna die. Boom, okay. So this one will be A. All right, and now when I stop and I play, we got AAA at the top with 70, and the rest are 0 and don't have any values. So that looks pretty good. Now if I get 70 and then get 140 and then I die. Okay. Boom. Boom. I'll put money. All right, and then play it. Okay, look at that. It got scooched down, 140 and 70, so that makes sense. Let's try to get an 80, so I squeeze right in between them, so 140 stays at the top, and then 70 gets moved down to place 3. Okay, so I'll get like anywhere between 80 and 130 points. I'll at least take out this guy. 70 80, 90, okay, 100. Now, it's gonna die one more time. Okay, and this one will be TWO, because it should be at the second place. So now when I press stop and I press play, cool. So this is working, right? We got money at the top, 2 at place 2, and AAA at third place. All right, so the next step is to make it so that after we're done entering the initials, it'll close that screen out and then update this so we could see our initials in the new screen. Okay, so I'm going to press stop. It added that new high score, right? So I'm going to go to this complete, and I'm going to send an event to GameObject.FSM. I'm going to target our high scores panel, the display score FSM, and I'm going to send a new global event that we'll just call update scores. Okay, and so on our high scores panel in the display scores, what I'm going to do is right click on our init state, add global transition, custom events, update scores. And so that'll update with this information and display it again. So over here, when we enter that information and we send that event, what we could do is just deactivate this new high score panel. We'll put in a deactivate self action. Okay, and we'll delay it by like 0.1 seconds, just so this event will get sent, and then a fraction of a second later, this screen will go away so we can actually see the high scores panel. We'll also probably want to turn on this press any key to start. Okay, so we'll game object, activate game object. We'll put this before the deactivate self. Okay, so we'll activate that press any key to start. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay, press any key to start. Cool, let's play. Let's go for the high score. And we will tune up some of this game. Okay, we just want to get some of the basics down first. And then, okay, that's plenty, right? 460, 470, okay, 490. 490 we'll make that the new high score. Crash, crash, okay. And we'll enter our, okay, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. So this didn't get updated. And I think it's because this deactivate self might have ran too early, right? So if we check our high scores panel really quick, not sure this updated twice. Okay, so maybe we could put this deactivate self in a separate state, okay? So gonna go ahead and drag this out and put that onto its own state. Okay, so it'll do all this stuff first and then deactivate self. Let's try that. I think we're going to see our new score anyway when we start this up, right? 490. Okay, so now we have to beat 490 to test this. Cool. 490, 500. Okay, 530. That's the new high score. All right, so now let's die. Okay, and this one we'll say question mark, question mark, question mark. And there we go. Now it updates when we're done. Okay, so that was the fix. So now when you enter it in, all that comes out nice. And the only thing that I'm seeing as a problem right now, we use this activate game object to try to activate this press any key to start game object, right? We have it activating here. But actually, if we select it, look, it is on, and that's great. But what we want to do is send it back to its start state as well. So what you could do is honestly something like activate and deactivate it. So you deactivate it first, then activate it again. And that way, when it gets activated, it'll start here at the first frame, at the first state. We can actually start with setting this property, right? Set property, property enabled, and set it to true. Okay, so whenever this restarts, it makes sure that this is on. Cool, let's see how that works. Okay, so now press any key to start pops up, and you could start again. So the thing about press any key to start, when you do click, it just activates this game object, right? If we just lost and sort of reset everything in the cleared everything in the game, we want to be able to reset the game. So actually, when we get game over and we activate this high score panel and everything, should honestly just be deactivating the game object as well. So that way everything can get reset here too. Okay, so now when we press play, we get start, spawn in. Okay, play a little bit, and then we'll die. Okay, and we'll do P, O, P, pop. Okay, now we have press any key to start, and we can click, and now the game restarts, right? We could spawn in again, and we have our little asteroids, but now you'll notice that our score is still at 210, right? So we want that to clear too. We do that pretty easily. So let's stop this, and we'll make sure that on initialize for the game loop, what we could do is come in here and we'll add a little header, and we'll say reset values, okay? And we'll say that here is where we can reset the game loop values. We'll put the weight up here at the top, but everything under this reset values header will be stuff like set int value, right? And we can set our lives back to its default value of 3. Okay, and then we could put in a set text, UI text set text, and we'll be specifying our lives text. Okay, we'll be setting that with our lives. Okay, so that'll set it back to 3 when we start over. But we also want to set our score text as well, right? And look at that over here on our score, on here on our start state, we can call this init. And we'll say that we'll reset some variables here as well. So we'll put in a UI text set text, specify game object, our score text. We're going to set it with score string. Now we can see that over here in display points that it's already doing this, right? So what we could do is we can move our start state over here and say finished and go here. And instead of putting a UI text set text, we could just do a set int value, and we'll be setting our score value to 0. So that way it just does this conversion for us and sets that still. Okay, so we could set score to 0, and then it comes here and it displays those points. So now when we reset the game and everything gets turned on and off and goes to their start states, right, where this little initialization state on score and this initialization state on the game loop, these values will get reset. So let's give that a test. Okay, so I'm gonna have to at least beat 140, right? And I'm dead. Press any key to start, spawns in, and look at that. We got 3 lives and we got 0 points. Let's do some cleanup. There are a few things, there's a few bugs that are happening in the game. The first thing I want to fix is that every time we update this scoreboard using this update scores, and we run through this FSM and everything, we want to make sure that these actions that iterate, like this get next child and this array get next and this array get next, that they actually reset once they've done their job once. Okay, and the way we can do that is by coming in here and putting in reset flags. So reset flags, you can see that there's one for each of these, are going to let us manually tell these actions to start from the first index all over again. Now, with this one, it isn't too much of a problem because when this action runs, it actually has a finished event, this complete event that fires off and goes here. And so this one actually will start from the beginning, but these two over here, since they're not firing off any events, we need to manually tell it to finish. But just to be safe, we'll set a reset flag for all of these. So you might be tempted to make a reset flag once, like if I come over here to new variable and just call this our next list reset flag, and then to come over here and then set these reset flags as the same thing, and then come over here and do a set bool value where we set our next reset flag to true. But the thing is, it's only going to get flipped once, and once it comes here, it'll get flipped back to false, and then over here, these two will never get that true bool value. So what you need to do is set one for each of them. So we're going to go ahead and come in here and say we'll make a reset flag for this one as well. We'll do reset flag underscore high scores, and we'll do a reset flag underscore winners. Okay, and that way over here we could just put 2 of these and say high scores and winners. So we have one for the next list, the high scores, and the winners. So all those will be set to true, which means that they're all getting reset once all of this finishes. So the next time we come back around and run this again, this will start from the beginning, and so will these two. Great, so that's the first thing I wanted to do. The next thing is that when we're typing in initials, so on the new high score panel, if we've been playing this, the thing is the initials will stay there from last time, and we'll be adding to a string that is four characters across. So we want to make sure that every time this new high score panel starts, that we're starting with a blank value. So over here in the add initial part, you can see that we're using this UI set text and this string append to append to the initials value. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this action and put it in the init state. I'm also going to put in a set string value right before it. Okay, and the string value for that is for initials, right? Because that's what we're setting, will just be nothing. And we'll also use this current character. I'm going to copy this and put it in this init state right here. Okay, and the current character, I'm going to do the same thing with the string value. So I'm going to set that to current character to just nothing. Or even you could just set it to A, right? Because that's what it starts with. That way, every time we come back to the screen, it'll be starting fresh instead of adding on to the last string of characters for our initials, right? And just so you understand what I'm talking about here, if I just make a state over here on the side, and if I make a comment here, just so I can show you what the text looks like, when we enter our initials, you know, it's stuff like this, DOG, right? You enter that in, and then you enter it, and then it saves. The next time we come back here, DOG is going to be there, and it's going to be asking us to put in a fourth syllable, like W or whatever the hell. So we don't want that. What we want it to do is that when you finished entering this, that value gets set to nothing, so you can start with W instead of adding on like to the last one. Okay, so that's just what I mean. So over here on our Asteroid spawner, I just want to make sure that on init, we actually put in a set int value that will set our number of asteroids to 1, right? Because that's its default value over here. Just want to make sure that every time our game resets, that so does the number of asteroids. Now, related to asteroids, the other thing I want to fix, the other thing I want to change, right now, currently, when you shoot an asteroid, that counts as destroying all the asteroids on the screen, even though there's a bunch of little asteroid pieces floating around. So what I think makes more sense is if we make sure that you have to shoot all the little pieces too before you clear the level. The way we could do that is by coming out to our project and clicking one of our asteroids here. Make sure we're looking at the FSM template. And when we do this create smaller, what we want to do is set the parent of this asteroid to the same parent of whatever this asteroid is. So on init, we can also do a get parent, okay? And we could say new variable asteroid container, okay? We're getting the parent of this asteroid because when it gets spawned in, that's what its parent is. So when we create this, we can set the parent as the asteroid container, okay? And make sure I change it for this one as well, asteroid container. Okay, that's where its parent will be. So I'm going to shoot this. Okay, see, we broke that one up. And there's a couple pieces still floating around. All right. And shoot this piece. And see, right now, we haven't progressed yet because there's still one piece. But then when I shoot that one, now we move on to the next level. Okay, so that makes sense. That's good. Let's try to get our high score, 280. All right, that's not bad. Let's get a few more, and then I'll make sure we go ahead and die really quick. All right, we'll add our new score for 330 as D A D. Okay, so Dad has 330. So Dad has 330.